Lord Kaido, I have urgent news to report, sir. Queen is having problems at the Udon prison and Jack just stubbed his toe. What are we gonna do, sir? Lord Kaido, are you okay?
Go away! I don't want you here! Everybody just get out of my cave!
Oh no, he's a sad drunk today. This is gonna be a problem. Is there anything I can help you out with, Sir Kaido? You gonna be okay, buddy?
Do you think I'm a giant?
Yes, sir, of course you're a giant. You can turn into a huge dragon the size of a town. Of course you're huge.
That's what everybody thinks, right? Everybody thinks I'm this huge, imposing figure. I'm barely 6 meters tall.
Well, yeah, but you're still taller than all of us, sir.
Well, of course I'm taller than all of you. You're like pissants. It's just not fair, you know? I have legacies to live up to. My mother was a volcano. My father was a giant meteor.
Wait, your dad was a meteor and your mom was, did you say a volcano?
Yeah, I know. They were from different worlds, but it was okay. They loved each other. They gave birth to me, and there was so much to live up to.
It's okay, sir. It's okay, sir. You have that giant one-shot mace. You don't need to be huge. Size doesn't matter.
You really think so? Alright. I think I'll come out now.
Plus, you're still bigger than that sea cow Big Mom, right? Greetings, one and all. I, Tekking101, am here today to pose a question that man has pondered since the dawn of the universe. The question is, what is Kaido? And right about now, I'm gonna give it a good, 30 seconds for people to go down in the comments section and just type in, he's a dragon, he's a dragon, he's a dragon, he's a dragon. What is Kaido, you ask, Tekking? Well, he's a dragon. Like, okay, I'm not against that. Go ahead, comment away. I was expecting it when I was gonna title this video, what is Kaido? Like, that's all that people are gonna comment below. But no, we're gonna go a little bit more into the meta with it. Because, hey, if you're cool with just the dragon explanation, like, that's the reason Kaido is nigh indestructible, that's the reason he can jump off of a cloud 10,000 meters up and crash into the ground and only have a minor headache and be like, yeah, he's a dragon, Tekking. You don't need to overly complicate this, alright? He's a dragon, and that explains everything about his character. But I wanted to look into some other things here, and there's a few of these I've brought up before. I've made a bunch of videos on Kaido, but the main point here is something that's actually going to tie back into the theme of Wano. Something that the Straw Hats are going to learn about through the course of Wano, and if it actually ties back to Kaido in this way, I think that would make a lot of sense, and it would fit into the flow of the story that Oda's trying to go here. So, yeah, okay, I think that's enough time for everybody to comment. Have you commented he's a dragon? I don't know if you guys are aware, but in case you're not, he's a dragon. Okay, cool. So, on top of being a dragon, I wanted to address Kaido's height, because this was something that has not been given an actual number. Like, Oda hasn't come out in a Viva card or anything, or an SBS, and actually given us a direct height for Kaido. So, it's a little inconsistent depending on what source you're looking at, because there's some scenes in the anime like this that make him out to be a legitimate giant. And I have to admit, every time I talk about Kaido in my videos, I always do reference him as at least, taller than Big Mom, as actual giant height. This is the reason why I always say that. This scene right here, when he crashes down, and granted, they're kind of messing with, the angles here a little bit. This exact scene in the manga is a little different. They don't do that, like, extended angle, like, looking up. It's pretty much just, like, Kid, Hawkins, and, Apu standing in front of Kaido, and Kaido's just directly in front of them. Not too much of a distance between them, and the height is very different there. So, I didn't know about this, and I was looking around and looking at different panels and comparing heights. So I actually, I direct messaged Artur over on Twitter, because I'm like, Artur, man, if anybody would understand how this works, if anybody would know Kaido's height, it'd be you. So I'm like, can you help me out with this? And we were comparing images back and forth, like, oh yeah, it's like this compared to other characters. And if you look at him here, this is probably the best one to show. This is the one during Wano after he, one-shotted Luffy with his mace. compared to other people, he really isn't all that tall. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, to the average human like Luffy or you or me, you know, we run into Kaido, you know, we'd immediately evacuate our bowels and just pass out right there from the sheer terror of him, because he is big in comparison to a regular human. But if you compare him to a giant, he's not even close to giant sized. He's much smaller than Dory and Broggy. He's a lot shorter than even the smallest giant at around 12 meters. So I'm like, okay, so maybe he's around the same size as Big Mom. But even in a lot of cases we've seen, Big Mom was around, she was almost 9 meters tall. She was like 8.8 meters or something like that. And Kaido right now hasn't really displayed anything much taller than like 6 meters at best. So he's basically, think of him as slightly taller than Katakuri, which that might actually give more, you know, credence to the whole Kaido is Katakuri's father theory I threw out a while ago. Maybe that might have a better idea there. But, you know, beyond that, yeah, a lot shorter than a lot of people were really thinking that he was. Maybe that's something that the anime really wanted to build up. Maybe I don't know if the anime is going to do this, because in the manga, it's pretty consistent with how Oda draws him. You know, Oda does not intend him to be like a giant-sized character, except when he's in his dragon form, of course. When he's a dragon, the dude is like the size of an entire town, and he can fly, obviously, and he's much longer, of course. But when it comes to just his standard human form, or whatever the hell you want to call this, I don't know, human might be stretching it a touch. Same thing with Big Mom. Human, you know, technically, but, you know, in this form he has. In the anime, they try to, I think, and make it look a lot more imposing. So maybe when we get to Wano in the anime, I don't know if they're going to try to beef him up a little bit, or if they're going to keep it the same as with in the manga, because in the manga, way smaller. So, of course, it's not the terror in the size of Kaido. Like, even though Kaido is a lot smaller than Dory and Broggy and a lot of the other giants, he is still way stronger than him. So, you know, it's like Dory is here and Kaido might be here, but at the end of the day, Kaido could just and then send Dory flying to the other side of the ocean. So it's not like it still doesn't really, size doesn't really matter in this particular context, is what I guess the vernacular of what I'm trying to go with here. So, I like to think, you know, something had to happen with Kaido in his past. There had to be some event or some training he went through that led him to become this indestructible being that we see. Now, indestructible, that's a loaded statement, okay? Because that seems to imply, like, there's nothing that anybody could do to defeat Kaido. And while we really haven't seen anything directly injure him in a serious way yet, I'm pretty sure by the end of this arc, we're going to see that. Like, I don't think this arc is going to end with everybody trying to attack Kaido, Kaido just brushing it all off, one-shotting everybody with his mace, and then One Piece is over and Kaido rules supreme over Wano. Oda's like, you know what, guys, I wrote myself into a corner, I'm sorry. You know, I had this big epic journey in mind, the Straw Hats were gonna get to Raftel, there was gonna be this big epic war, I had all of this stuff planned out, but then I created Kaido, and I just couldn't figure out a way to get around him, so you know, the creation kind of just takes on a life of its own, you know? He just takes out his mace and defeats everybody, and, that's the end of the series. So yeah, I'm pretty sure by the end of the by the end of Wano, there's gonna be a moment where he's gonna be vulnerable, he's gonna be defeated, maybe even possibly killed. That one's always a little bit more of a stretch, because people dying in One Piece doesn't happen super often. But hey, I mean, if there was ever gonna be an arc where the main villain had to just drop and die, and, you know, at the end of it, I would say this would definitely be a point where that had to happen, right? So basically, I'm asking you guys, though, like, was Kaido always like this? Is it something through genetics? So I threw out the idea of, like, okay, Kaido's got the demon horns. A lot of people have connected that back to Orrs and the demon giant race that he was part of, or the ancient giant race. So maybe it was like right out of the womb, Kaido was just a genetic, you know, amalgamation of, like, the strongest beings in One Piece, the strongest species, and that's why he's so strong. Well, saying that you're descended from, like, the demon giant race, that sounds pretty cool, right? Like, I'm a demon giant. You know, that sounds awesome, but look at the actual demon giants we've seen. Look at Orrs Junior. Look at Orrs. They were imposing, sure. Were they indestructible? Were they invulnerable? did they show the same level of resistance that Kaido is displaying right now? Not really. Not really. Orrs was regarded as a terrifying continent puller of his day, but he ended up dying because of exposure. Orrs Junior, also about the same size as his predecessor, only like 1 meter shorter than Orrs, but still, you know, he charged into Marineford and he got the crap beat out of him by Doflamingo and Kuma, and just, you know, gunfire just successively hitting him. You know, he eventually got worn down there. I feel like if Kaido stormed into Marineford, I don't think he would be taken down by Kuma and Doflamingo quite as easily as Orrs Jr. was, right? So, you could say, like, oh yeah, he's descended, he has demon giant blood in him, sure, and I could still buy that, given the horns and all that, but you can't just say that's the reason he's indestructible, that's the reason he's invincible, because he has the blood of a demon giant in him, when we've seen these purebred demon giants, they're not indestructible, right? So you might have to get other stuff involved here. You might have to get, like, okay, he has demon giant blood, and he also has maybe another species in One Piece. Maybe he has legitimate dragon blood in his veins. I don't exactly know how that works out in terms of, you know, your lineage. You know, like a demon giant is stomping around, and he, man, that's a real attractive dragon over there. Dude, check out those wings, bro. You know, like, and then stuff happens, and then Kaido's born. I mean, look, there's a lot of crazy species in One Piece, right? There's Sea Kings, there used to be dragons, they're not really around too much anymore. There's moon creatures and space pirates that are foxes and everything. There's a lot of crazy things going on in One Piece, alright? And if we're going with my theory that Wano, a long time ago, used to have legitimate, like, Oni and Kappas walking around in Tengus, and we see a Tengu right now in the story, and he's just a remnants of that. If that was the case in Wano, I could maybe see it. Maybe Kaido's parents were a demon giant and a straight up Oni. All right. Possibly. It's a consideration you have to look at, right? So yeah, there's that one route of looking at it, the genetic route. Then you got his devil fruit, the mythical zone, I guess it would just be mythical zone dragon fruit, right? Because the other ones we've seen are like the dragon fruit model, like, Triceratops or something, and it's an actual dinosaur, but dragons are ancient, dinosaurs are ancient dragons, right? Sure, yeah, let's go with that. Okay, here's one thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm not saying I believe this, I'm just mentioning it as a point, because it hasn't been seen yet in the story. Nobody has directly referenced Kaido's power as a mythical zone, as a devil fruit. The closest we got to it was Kinemon said he has the ability to transform into a dragon, but that's all he said. And also, we haven't seen a hybrid form of Kaido yet. We saw him in his full dragon form, we saw him in his human form, or the closest thing to a human form. We haven't seen the hybrid form like we saw with X-Drake or Page 1. Now, I still think that it's a mythical zone. I'm pretty damn sure it's a mythical dragon zone. I'm simply saying Oda hasn't had a text box revealed yet, like this is the name of his fruit, and nobody else in Wano has came out and said Kaido has the power of a mythical zone. But keep in mind, that's mostly because the people of Wano don't really know about devil fruits. So it would make sense why Kinemon didn't come out of nowhere and say, yes, he has the power of the mythical dragon zone, because he didn't really know what devil fruits were, because he didn't even know he had a devil fruit. He thought it was just a type of sorcery. So that's just something you gotta keep in mind, but, you know, it hasn't ever been actually stated yet officially by Oda, so maybe keep just a little bit, maybe keep the door open just a crack on that, because who knows, they might always come out and say, oh yeah, he has the power to turn into a dragon, but it's not because he has a dragon zone, it's because his lineage goes back to dragon, or something like that. Once again, don't think that's the case, but important to, you know, bring up. So something else that people have thought about, he's like, okay, well, because Kaido has a mythical dragon zone, that's the reason he's so indestructible, right? Possibly. Look at it like the way Sengoku is. Sengoku has the power of the Buddha, alright? Which the Buddha is like a transcendent being, you know? Not necessarily a god per se, but like a being that exists beyond the mortal realm, right? And the abilities we've seen Sengoku display don't really seem to be, like, divine. Alright, the powers we've seen Sengoku display is he can turn into a giant golden statue, Okay, that's impressive. He can stomp around. He's, stronger defense, stronger offense, all that kind of stuff. And he can emit shockwaves. So, he's just like, boom! Maybe he has some other abilities we've seen. Oh, and he can also emit light, if we're just gonna go with that, like, because he's the Buddha, he's enlightening, literally enlightening. He turns into his Buddha, and then light begins to emit around him, okay? But mostly we've just seen increase in size, increase of, like, base stats, strength, and defense, and also his shockwaves. And that's all we've seen there. Does that mean because he represents the Buddha, the Daibutsu, that he's gonna be like, I have the ability to achieve enlightenment at a cosmic level, or I'm somewhat immortal because of that? I don't think that's the case there. The case with Marco. Marco has the power of the Phoenix. He can recover from pretty much any wound he suffers from, but does that mean he's immortal? Does that mean, like, because the story with the Phoenix is when the Phoenix dies, it bursts into flames, and then a newborn Phoenix chick, cheep, cheep, arises from the ashes. And that's the whole deal with the Phoenix. But I'm pretty sure that's not how Marco's fruit works. I mean, we don't know. We've never seen Marco die. Maybe his fruit is the weird exception to the reincarnation rule. Who knows? But I really don't think that Marco, when he does legitimately die, whether it be from battle or just old age, Marco is going to explode into fire, and then like a little baby Marco pops out of the, little baby pineapple-headed Marco pops out of the ashes. Like, yay! I don't think that's going to be the case. So, you could say, yeah, dragons are these invincible deities, essentially, back in old Chinese lore. That's what they were. They were like, water dragon gods and shit. But does that mean that he's literally immortal just because of his dragon form? I don't think that's the case. Very strong, certainly has access to the Boro breath, and he can fly, and he can kind of warp the weather when he's around. A lot of cool traits, but I'm going to say that his immortality doesn't come directly from the fruit. So where do I think it comes from? It's like, all right, well, how about this? How about this? I like this. Let's go with this. Okay. So it was, once again, never directly said, but it was implied that Kaido and Big Mom were on Rocks' crew. I say this because they talk about, back in the day, about 40 odd years ago, we were working together on the same crew. Where we were partners, okay? Now, you can maybe take that to mean there was another crew altogether, but I'm going to say it was Rocks because this was right around the time. This was literally in the same arc where Rocks was first mentioned, that we had that conversation between Big Mom and Kaido talking about, like, back in the old days, remember that? So, okay, let's just assume, because there's a few hypotheticals here, but let's just assume, all right, they were both working on Rocks' ship 40-something years ago. We hear how Garp talks about Rocks. Garp talks about Rocks, and this is something else. Some people imply that he was talking about the entire crew as a collective. Other people think he was talking about the captain directly. Like, if Rocks himself, the person, or Locks, I'm just going to use Rocks because, whatever. But, Rocks, the person, ever, resurfaced, if he ever came back from wherever he is, if he's dead or if he just left and he went into seclusion, if Rocks ever came back and got the full power of his crew back up into fighting power, then there's nothing the Marines can do, there's nothing the government can do, there's nothing other pirates could do. We're pretty much just screwed at that point. Like, that's a world-ending kind of scenario. Okay. So, I'm gonna throw this out here. Let's say Kaido worked under Rocks, okay? And Kaido learned the highest level of armament Haki from Rocks. Let's say Rocks was essentially the god of armament Haki in the One Piece world. Given the amount of hype that has been built up around this person, it wouldn't be surprising to me if it's like the one person in the entirety of the One Piece world that mastered armament Haki to levels beyond human comprehension and achieved god-level status essentially with that power. If it was going to be Rocks, I'd be okay with that. All right? And so he began to teach Kaido as his apprentice back when he was on his ship. Maybe he just took a liking to Kaido or whatever. The secrets of his power. And so the power that Kaido is displaying right now, the ability to just fall off of a sky island and crash into the ground like a meteorite without really having any serious injuries, tanking all these hits from Luffy. I mean, yeah, he was flying in the air. Luffy was able to, knock him to the ground and everything like that. Keep in mind, he was drunk as a skunk at that point, but, he didn't really seem to have any damage after it, maybe that's because of like an extremely finely tuned armament Haki. And the reason that this ties back into Wano, I don't think I have to explain it, but I will. It's kind of my job. Is because we find out more about armament Haki from Luffy training in the prison. He's talking about the effects that Rayleigh had when he was fighting the elephant, how that like invisible armament Haki. And I completely forgot about this, but the armament Haki we saw at Marineford that the admirals displayed, you know, where they were all just raising up their hands and just block the attack at the same time. So there's definitely, you know, further levels of armament Haki that are not the vulcanization black, you know, armor skin that we see that, you know, like Luffy and Zoro uses on his swords. Zoro learning about Shusui and how it's a black sword, a Kokuto, and how you can maybe permeate armament into it. So armament's definitely going to be a main focus of this arc, based on the swords and also like the way Luffy fights with the invisible kind of armament Haki. So I'm like, all right, so how about you make Kaido, like maybe excluding Rocks right now in the world, he is the best armament user. I mean, maybe only rivaled by people like Rayleigh, okay? And that would be the scary thing, because let's say, yeah, Kaido is really good at armament Haki, he might be the best user of that in the world, but Rocks was better at it. See, that would be a really good way of, let's say they defeat Kaido at the end of Wano, and they go through, I'm sure the battle is going to be intense, it's going to require a lot of manpower, but let's say they finally manage to drop Kaido, this invincible man. It's like, yes! We did it! We brought it home! And then maybe as Kaido is like fading out of consciousness, or maybe he's even dying on the ground, his last memory is he flashes back to training with Rocks. And we learn maybe through that flashback, like, no, Rocks was stronger, and he might still be out there somewhere in the world. So this threat is taken care of, but there's somebody even stronger out there. Kind of like, actually, sort of like in the movie Dragon Ball Battle of Gods, where the entire movie it's built up like Beerus is the strongest character to ever exist in Dragon Ball up until that point, period. And then Goku fights against him, and it's a crazy, intense, high-octane battle. And at the very end of the movie, what do we find out? We find out Whis is even stronger than Beerus. And I was just like, whoa, so this, it just keeps going, doesn't it? Like, yeah, so maybe it might be something like that. Sorry, Whis. He'll be okay. But it's like, maybe it might be something like that, where it's like, Kaido is this ridiculously strong character. If it's 1v1, Kaido wins, but at the end of the arc, you know, he manages to get dropped, but then we learn, oh no, yeah, he was strong, but there's somebody that's even stronger, and it's Rocks, and he's, you know, maybe gonna come back into the spotlight wherever he's at right now, or maybe he's sealed somewhere, or maybe he just took a vacation. Maybe he's such a badass, he's just like, you know what? I think I'm gonna take a vacation for 40 years. Just because he wanted to, and then he's done with it. He's like, all right, I'm done with it. Time to teach these little brats a lesson all over again. Maybe. Actually, I don't think Rocks, if he comes back, I don't think he's going to be using an insta-kill mace. That's child's play. No, he's going to be busting out the big guns. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Yeah, it's a lot more surface area, you know, and it dices you if it hits you. Yeah, Rocks busts out, this is my one-shot racket. No, but, yeah, I hope Rocks does appear. When Rocks was first name-dropped, I thought he might be in the next movie, kind of like the Shiki thing. You know, it's like, oh, Shiki's being name-dropped a lot in the manga, but that's really just for the movie Strong World. And then after the movie Strong World, we don't really talk about Shiki much anymore. So I'm hoping that wasn't what the situation is with Rocks. I hope it's not like, Rocks is this really powerful character. Then he shows up in the movie, and then after the movie hype dies down, we kind of just don't talk about him anymore. But no, from what we see with Stampede, it doesn't seem like Rocks is going to be the main enemy. I'm thinking this is something Oda's definitely setting up for later on in the manga. You know, that would be, you know, I thought the way this was going to go was the Blackbeard route, because we're in the Yonko saga right now. It's like, we went up against Big Mom, we got to see how much of a threat she was, then we went up against Kaido, and that was a really major fight. And I originally assumed at the end of Wano, Blackbeard was going to arrive. And it was maybe Blackbeard was going to steal Kaido's corpse, or, you know, use it to make a zombie, or take his devil fruit, or something like that. Basically something to show us that, like, yeah, you went through all this effort between Big Mom and Kaido, well, guess what? Blackbeard is the serious threat. Blackbeard is way stronger than both of them, or he has a plan that makes him stronger. But you could also easily include Rocks there. You could be like, oh yeah, all this problem with Big Mom and freaking Kaido, well guess what? They were freaking apprentices on my ship. I'm the serious threat you need to worry about, not these little kids. And then Wano ends with that kind of message, like, holy crap, we got this guy to worry about now, who's even stronger than Big Mom and Kaido. You know, because you got to keep the hype train moving. You can't just be like, all right, we defeated Kaido, strongest beast in the world. We demolished Kaido. Pretty much just a walk in the park now, right? We just kind of go to Raftel, get the One Piece, and call it a day. No other threats. I mean, hey, he's the strongest creature. So after Wano, we're going to have to either, you know, find out that Blackbeard might, you know, steal Kaido's body or steal his dragon fruit, so Blackbeard is now the strongest fighter, or Rocks shows up to take his throne as like, no, I'm the new major threat you need to worry about. Or we could always get Shanks involved. I never really saw the Straw Hats directly facing off against the Red Hair Pirates in that way, but you could get Shanks involved in some way. But, yeah, I just don't want it to be the case where it's like Kaido's taken out and the Straw Hats are like, all right, well, that was the biggest threat we've ever had, so it's just going to be an easy cakewalk from here, when we know it's not going to be, right? So, yeah, that's the situation. Now, there's also that old theory, and I think we can pretty much throw that out right now, that old theory about, like, Kaido was a poneglyph that was given a devil fruit. I'm pretty sure that's not the case now, because let's say he does have a mythical zone. You know, he can turn into a human and he can turn into a dragon. I'm pretty sure a poneglyph isn't, like, included in that, like, if you mix between human and dragon, you get poneglyph. That doesn't make any sense, right? The only way that would be conceivable is if you'd have to get a lot of what-ifs going on to make that likely. You'd have to be like, all right, the dragon thing isn't a devil fruit, it's his heritage. He could just turn into it whenever, which is already raising a bunch of problems. But then he has the power of the Road Poneglyph, so we haven't even seen his Devil Fruit abilities yet. I mean, hey, we've yet to see his Road Poneglyph. We assume it's in, like, the dungeons of Onigashima, which is a muffin, by the way, but we've never seen it, so I'm sure once we've seen it, though, and that's gonna happen, then that theory can just die. But, yeah, that's the way I'm gonna look at this from now on. Like, he was taught this insane level of armament, because remember, even though he's indestructible, he's still been captured many times, so there's still flaws with Kaido. But if we get somebody like Rocks in town that's like, I've never been captured, and Marines Garp pisses his pants when he sees me coming, you know, and I'm the god of armament Haki, you know, when we see somebody like that with, like, no weaknesses like Kaido has, because Kaido had weaknesses in the sense of, like, his drunkenness, and depending on what mood he's in when he is drunk, and his little hobby where he tries to off himself, so he's had a few problems there. Not to say that you have to make Rocks, like, literally a god or a deity, but, you know, you can make him somehow, like, this is the greatest threat of the One Piece world, and that's Rocks right here. Like, even Roger couldn't defeat Rocks, maybe something like that. And, how would you defeat him? That would be the question. Like, that would have to be something like, you'd have to get Shanks and everybody involved with in order to take him down. The admirals, you know, like, that would be an insane fight. But I really want to include Rocks in this because he was name-dropped in Reverie. So let me know what you guys think below. Also, super thanks to Artur for, you know, going over everything in the height of Kaido and all that stuff. Hopefully we'll get, like, something in an SBS or, you know, the Viva card at some point. Like, give us this exact height. But from the way Oda's drawing him and just disregarding the anime entirely, maybe slightly taller than Katakuri. 6 meters, maybe 6.5 meters, something like that. Probably not even, maybe the same height as Whitebeard. If we're talking that, maybe same height as Whitebeard, because it was mentioned that we don't know, I don't think we know Whitebeard's height. We know Big Mom's, and Oda mentioned directly that Big Mom is taller than Whitebeard. So if you want to say Kaido's the same height as Whitebeard, makes sense there, but maybe not. So, you know, I'm not going to get super into that. But thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks to Artur. Have a great night, everybody. Are you ready to face the ultimate Raquette? Oh, I need to buy a new computer now.